Welcome to the deep dive. We take fascinating sources and pull out the real nuggets of knowledge for you.
And today we're diving into something pretty profound.
Yeah, one of humanity's oldest questions, really.
Hmm.
When does the soul actually enter the human body? Is it like, bam, one moment?
Or is it more of a gradual thing, unfolding over time?
Exactly. We've got articles, research, ancient texts. We're going deep into this sacred moment of incarnation.
We'll be looking at the main theories, the symbolism, those subtle signs some mothers report.
Right, and perspectives from, well, all over East, West spiritual traditions.
And even some modern science that kind of makes you rethink consciousness itself.
Our goal today is just to help you navigate all these really deep insights and get a handle on what might actually matter in this whole enigmatic process.
Okay, so let's start with this idea of a doorway, a threshold.
Yeah, picture it, like a boundary between two, well, realms.
Mm.
On one side, you've got this infinite space, souls as pure energy.
Uh-huh. Formless.
And on the other, our world, tangible reality, bodies forming cell by cell in the womb.
And this threshold, this doorway, it's the gateway for incarnation.
But it's not just physical, is it?
No, that's what's so fascinating. Our sources suggest it's happening on all levels at once. Physical, emotional, mental, spiritual.
Wow.
Yeah, it really defies a simple, like, A, then B explanation. It's multidimensional.
And people have been trying to explain this forever, haven't they?
Absolutely. Cultures throughout history, you mentioned the Egyptian.
Yeah, they linked it to stars, constellations. The Greeks talked about divine breath.
Right. And Hindu traditions describe it more like a gradual anchoring.
So lots of different angles.
Very different interpretations, yeah. But they all seem to point towards a specific moment, something sacred, when things fundamentally shift.
And there might be signs, subtle ones.
Subtle signs, exactly, for those who are, attuned to notice them.
Okay, so given all that complexity, how do people try to pin it down?
Mm-hmm.
What are the main theories about when this happens?
Well, if we boil it down, our sources point to sort of three major contenders, three main theories.
Okay, theory one.
Entry at conception, the very beginning.
Right, the moment the sperm fertilizes the egg. You hear this a lot in certain Christian traditions, esoteric schools too.
Exactly. They see that moment as creating this unique energy field. A new blueprint is formed instantly.
And it's interesting, you mentioned signs earlier. Proponents of this theory often bring up mothers' experiences, don't they?
They do. Reports of really vivid dreams or feeling a definite energetic shift, sometimes apparently on the very night conception happened.
Okay, so that's conception. What's the next major idea?
Then there's the theory of entry at implantation.
Which is a bit later, right?
Yeah, typically about 6 to 12 days after conception. It's when the embryo actually attaches itself firmly to the wall of the uterus.
And the thinking here is, well, the soul needs a physical anchor point.
Sort of, yeah. Like needing a fixed address before it can properly settle in. A stable foundation. And timing-wise, this lines up with when the body starts producing key pregnancy hormones.
Ah, like HCG.
Exactly. Some see that as almost a chemical signal, like the body saying, okay, we're ready. And, looking at shamanic views, they sometimes describe this implantation phase as a crucial period of negotiation.
Negotiation.
Between who?
Between the incoming soul and maybe the family lineage, the energy's already present. It's quite a concept.
It really is. Okay. Conception, implantation. What's the third main theory?
The third one is, well, maybe the most poetic. Entry at the first heartbeat.
Around week 3.
Yeah, roughly the third week of pregnancy. That moment when the heart starts its own rhythm.
It feels significant, doesn't it? The heart's always been seen as the seat of the soul in so many cultures.
Precisely. It's like this tiny pulse is announcing, I'm here, I'm alive now. It's powerful.
So conception, implantation, first heartbeat, 3 distinct moments. But could it be more complex?
Well, that's the next question, isn't it? What if they're all right in a way?
How would that work? Some esoteric traditions actually propose something more like a stepwise process, a layered arrival.
Okay.
So maybe the initial spark of life, that first connection, happens at conception, then perhaps a deeper emotional connection, a kind of bonding, solidifies at implantation.
Right.
And then maybe full consciousness or really deep anchoring happens with that first heartbeat.
So it's not just one event, but a gradual unfolding.
Exactly, a gradual becoming. And this layered view could actually explain why we have such diverse reports from mothers and why there's compelling, anecdotal evidence supporting each of those specific moments. It fits it all together, potentially.
And speaking of timing, there's this number that keeps popping up in relation to all this, isn't there? The number 40?
Ah, yes, the 40 days. It's really striking how universal that number is in spiritual contexts.
Noah's flood, 40 days and nights. The Israelites wandering for 40 years.
Jesus in the desert, Buddha's fasting. 40 days keeps appearing.
And in pregnancy, those first 40 days are often seen as incredibly sacred, transformative.
They really are. It's like a cosmic script playing out in miniature. Think about what happens in those first roughly 6 weeks.
Everything, almost.
Pretty much. Conception? Yes. Then incredibly rapid cell division, the journey to the uterus, implantation.
The beginnings of all the major organs.
Exactly. And crucially, within that time frame, the first heartbeat. It's when the absolute foundational work happens.
Wow.
And some esoteric teachings suggest that during these specific 40 days, the soul isn't fully in yet, but maintains a kind of energetic umbilical cord to higher dimensions.
Like it's still connected back.
Yeah, making final adjustments, overseeing the initial construction phase, you might say, before fully committing to incarnation.
And mothers often report things happening during this time too, right? Even before they know for sure.
Very often. Those vivid, lucid dreams we mentioned, sometimes a really distinct feeling of a presence or just intuition kicking into high gear.
There's even a numerology connection, isn't there? 40 days is about 5 weeks and 5 days.
Right, and the number 5 often symbolizes the complete human, the microcosm, or the manifestation of divine will into form. So that number 5 showing up around 40 days adds another layer of symbolic meaning.
It's like the numbers themselves are echoing the significance.
It seems that way, and Eastern traditions have their own take on this period. They might call it the first spiritual breath.
Not a physical breath, obviously.
No, more like the soul's first inhalation of material experience, a gradual getting used to it.
Like a diver adjusting.
Exactly like a diver adjusting to the pressure as they go deeper. It's an acclimatization. And physically, during these 40 days, the absolute core structures are forming: nervous system, heart, limbs, sensory organs start developing. It's as if the soul is right there, overseeing the build.
Making sure its new home is ready.
Precisely. Preparing every room, so to speak.
And there's another layer, too, in some schools of thought about destiny.
Yes, some esoteric schools teach that this 40-day window is also when the soul finalizes its agreements for the life ahead.
Like choosing lessons,
Yeah.
challenges, gifts.
Exactly. Locking in the core themes and purposes for that particular incarnation. It's a period of profound pre-birth planning.
And the mother might not even know she's pregnant yet.
Often, yes. It's almost as if the soul prefers to do this crucial preparatory work in secret, quietly setting the stage before the pregnancy is announced to the world, or even to the mother herself.
Wow. So it seems the universe doesn't just let this happen silently. There are signs.
That's what our sources strongly suggest. When a soul makes its entrance, it leaves traces. Subtle, maybe, but consistent signs reported across cultures.
Like those dreams you mentioned.
Exactly. Vivid dreams are a big one. Mothers describing meeting the baby's soul, sometimes in symbolic ways, even before a pregnancy test is positive.
Not just regular dreams.
No, they're often described as unusually luminous, clear, carrying in a distinct feeling or message. We found one account, really beautiful.
Yeah.
A mother dreamed of a child in a garden full of golden flowers, and the child just looked at her and said, "Mom, I chose you."
Wow. Just days before she found out she was pregnant.
Exactly. It's incredibly powerful when you hear stories like that.
What other kinds of signs are reported?
Another common one is a sudden shift in energetic sensitivity. Women report suddenly perceiving presences more easily, or feeling distinct shifts in the energy of a room or in their own body, or just picking up on subtle vibrations they wouldn't normally notice.
Like their own awareness expands.
It's described that way, yes. As if the soul's arrival somehow expands the mother's own energetic receptors, tuning her into finer frequencies.
Okay. Dreams, energy sensitivity. What else?
Then there are synchronicities and subtle physical changes.
Synchronicities like meaningful coincidences.
Yeah, things like seeing the same number sequence over and over, or hearing a specific song with meaningful lyrics at just the right moment, things that feel personally significant.
And physical changes beyond the usual pregnancy stuff.
Sometimes, yes. Unexplained shifts in taste, sudden intense craving, or aversions that don't seem purely hormonal, almost like the incoming soul is already making its preferences known. And another one is an altered perception of time.
How so?
Some mothers report a distinct moment where time seemed to stop, or stretch, or shift fundamentally. A clear sense of before this moment and after this moment. aligning with when they felt the soul entered.
Like marking the event.
Precisely, marking that energetic threshold crossing.
You also mentioned animals.
Yeah, animal behavior sometimes comes up. Pets suddenly becoming unusually protective or attentive towards the expectant mother, seemingly sensing the new presence.
And just a mother's intuition.
Absolutely. A strong maternal intuition kicking in very early, sometimes feeling a distinct fullness or a subtle vibration internally, or just knowing things about the baby, its temperament, its energy, long before there's any way to know.
It's quite a list.
It is. And these signs, our modern culture might tend to dismiss them.
Right. Brush them off.
But taken together, across so many accounts, they really paint a picture of everyday miracles. Little announcements that a new consciousness is arriving.
So that's the Western focus, often on when. But Eastern traditions approach it differently.
Yeah, generally speaking. While the West often gets caught up in pinpointing that exact instant, Eastern traditions tend to offer a more nuanced picture of how it happens, more of a process.
Like a gradual descent.
Exactly, a gradual descent.
So in Hinduism, for example.
In Hinduism, the soul, the Atman, isn't seen as just arriving in one go. It's described as descending through different levels, almost like putting on layers of clothing.
7 levels, I think I read.
7 vibrational levels, yes. Each step brings it closer to the material plane. The very first contact might be at conception.
Okay.
But the full anchoring, bringing the soul's karma and life purpose fully into the mix, that's often thought to happen later, maybe around the 4th month.
So it's definitely a journey for the soul itself.
Very much so. And Tibetan Buddhism has a really fascinating perspective, too, with the concept of the bardo.
The intermediate state between lives.
Right. They teach that the soul spends time in the bardo, potentially up to 49 days, observing potential families, potential births.
Actively choosing.
Actively observing and choosing the most suitable conditions, the best room for its next life and lessons.
Wow. So the connection starts even before conception.
That's the idea. The soul establishes an energetic link with the future parents, subtly influencing things, guiding the process towards the right moment of creation.
That's profound. And Taoism. Another perspective again.
Yeah, Taoism uses beautiful imagery. The soul is like a raindrop condensing out of the vastness of the Tao, gradually taking form.
Not all at once.
No, they talk about 3 spiritual aspects, the hun entering at different stages.
Okay.
The first hun, linked to vital force, enters at conception. The second, which governs personality and emotions, comes in around the 3rd month.
Okay.
And the third, carrying spiritual wisdom and the connection back to the Tao, arrives at birth itself.
A truly layered arrival. I like that.
It is. And what's really practical is that these traditions didn't just theorize. They often developed specific practices.
Rituals. Meditations.
Yes, things like mantras, specific meditations, rituals designed to support each phase of this descent, to help the mother tune in, to consciously welcome and assist the arriving soul.
So the mother is an active participant.
Absolutely. A co-creator in this sacred journey.
Now, switching back west, but maybe going a bit deeper than standard doctrine, what about esoteric Christianity? Does it offer similar rich views?
Oh, definitely. Beyond the mainstream interpretations, there's a whole mystical stream within Christianity with really poetic visions of the soul's entry.
From mystics and visionaries.
Exactly. People like St. Hildegard of Bingen, she described the soul descending like a shaft of golden light.
Beautiful image.
And she believed it entered when the embryo reached a certain spiritual maturity, bringing 3 gifts: life, wisdom, and love.
Anchoring at different times.
Anchoring at different times, yes. And you find hints in texts like the Gospel of Philip, talking about the Holy Spirit sealing the soul, a moment perhaps only visible spiritually.
And others, like Meister Eckhart.
He used the analogy of one fire lighting another, a gradual ignition of consciousness, not just a switch being flipped.
That makes sense.
And you hear stories from the Desert Fathers about angels literally weaving the soul's garment around the physical form.
Wow.
St. Teresa of Avila envisioned the soul having these inner chambers, like rooms in a castle, being illuminated one by one during pregnancy.
A progressive awakening.
Precisely. And these esoteric traditions often talk about the need for the soul to connect with more than just the physical.
Like the energy bodies.
Yes, the etheric body, the vital life template, and the astral body tied to emotions and desires. The idea is that true incarnation involves integrating with these subtle layers too.
And that's a process.
A process, yes. Often seen as starting with the etheric, then the astral, and completing fully with the physical body at birth.
There was also that concept of the silver cord.
Ah, yes, from Emanuel Swedenborg. A really powerful image. He described it as this luminous cord, like a line of light, linking the soul back to the spiritual worlds.
Established at incarnation.
Established at incarnation and remaining throughout life, connecting us until death. He believed sensitive individuals could actually perceive it.
So a constant connection.
A constant tether. And what really stands out across all these Christian mystical views is the sense of it being a sacred, guided event.
Assisted by angels or spiritual beings.
Yes, almost universally. The soul isn't seen as making this journey alone, but is accompanied, protected, guided throughout its descent in life.
Okay, so we have these ancient wisdom traditions, these mystical views.
Hmm.
But what about today? Is modern science completely silent on this?
Well, not entirely. While mainstream science operates under different assumptions, our sources did point to some really fascinating emerging research and, let's say, alternative scientific perspectives that do challenge a purely materialistic view.
Stuff that makes you think twice.
Exactly. Research that hints at consciousness maybe being present much earlier or in different ways than we typically assume.
Like what, for example?
Well, there's Dr. Peter Heer's work. His research indicated that fetuses, even as young as 18 weeks, can show preferences for music.
Really?
Yeah, and recognize their mother's voice, respond to emotional cues from the mother, behaviors that aren't easily explained just by the stage of brain development at that point.
Suggesting some level of awareness.
It certainly suggests a level of processing and response that's quite sophisticated. Some fetuses even seem to show distinct personality traits early on.
And what about memory? I remember reading something about that.
Right. Dr. Joseph Benvenuto documented cases suggesting fetal memory. Young children recalling specific things, conversations they overheard, details about the environment while they were in the womb.
Which defies conventional memory models, right? Memory isn't supposed to form that early.
Exactly. It really challenges our standard timeline for memory development.
Anything else linking mother and fetus?
Dr. Catherine Monk's research is interesting here. She found evidence that a fetus's heartbeat can actually change in direct response to the mother's thoughts and emotions.
Not just her physical state, but her thoughts.
That's what the findings suggested, pointing towards some kind of deep, nonverbal communication, maybe even telepathic connection, or at least a profound energetic resonance between the two consciousnesses.
Wow. Okay. That's pretty mind-bending.
It is. And then you get into areas like biophotonics.
Light emissions from cells.
Yeah, Dr. Fritz Albert Popp's discovery that living cells emit tiny amounts of light. And his studies apparently showed that during pregnancy, the fetal biophotonic field has unique patterns.
Like an extra light source.
Almost, yeah, as if there's an additional energy signature present.
Yeah.
And related to that, Dr. Kazuo Murakami looked at gene activation.
What did he find?
He found certain genes linked to higher cognitive functions and even intuition seem to activate spontaneously during pregnancy, almost like they're being switched on by some external program or influence.
External, meaning from the soul.
Well, that's the implication drawn by some interpretations of this research, that something beyond just genetics is influencing development.
And brain activity.
There's also research noting a sudden burst in neural connectivity at a critical point in gestation. The brain literally wires itself up incredibly rapidly, and the brainwave patterns observed sometimes resemble those seen in experienced meditators.
Meditators, that's unexpected.
It is. And finally, studies on twins in the womb have shown them interacting, communicating nonverbally, coordinating movements in ways that suggest a level of awareness and interaction beyond just reflexive actions.
Okay, so while maybe not mainstream accepted science yet, there are definitely intriguing findings out there.
Intriguing finding, exactly. Presented in our sources as thought-provoking perspectives that hint at consciousness being more complex and perhaps present earlier than the standard model allows. Areas for ongoing exploration, for sure.
This all brings us back to a really huge question, though. Does the soul choose this? Choose when to come in, where to go?
That's a central theme in many advanced spiritual traditions, and also in fields like regression hypnotherapy, the idea of conscious choice before birth.
Not just being randomly assigned.
Not at all. Dr. Michael Newton's work, for example, based on thousands of hypnotic regressions, suggests souls undertake quite extensive planning.
Planning what?
Reviewing potential family lines, understanding the karmic lessons they need or want to learn, figuring out their life purpose, and then choosing the timing and circumstances that best fit.
That sounds incredibly complex.
It's described as involving guidance, sometimes from councils of more evolved beings, and weighing up all sorts of factors: cosmic timing, astrology, family dynamics, personal soul contracts.
So the soul might even watch for a bit. after choosing a family.
Yes, the idea is that the soul might observe the very early stages of development before fully committing, making sure everything aligns. It's seen as a real partnership.
And thinking about it that way, yeah, it could offer a different perspective on pregnancy loss.
It really could. For parents going through that heartbreak, this perspective suggests it might not be a biological failure, but perhaps reflects the soul's own timing, its own choice, for reasons we can't understand. It reframes it as part of a larger soul plan.
That could be comforting for some.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
And this idea of choosing the right time aligns with astrological traditions, too.
How so?
They teach that souls often wait for very specific planetary alignments, configurations that resonate with their intended life path and purpose, so they might consciously delay or even accelerate their entry to match the cosmic energies.
And again, people report dreams about this.
Yes, many parents report dreams, sometimes before conception, where they feel the soul of their future child communicating its intentions, its readiness, or even its preferred timing.
Thinking about it this way, it really changes how you view parenting, doesn't it?
Completely. You're not just a passive vessel receiving a random arrival.
You're a co-creator.
Exactly. A conscious co-creator with a soul who has actively chosen you, chosen this family, for specific shared experiences and growth.
So every challenge, every joy, it's part of a mutual journey.
A mutual lesson, exactly. Every moment becomes an opportunity for that shared growth and unfolding.
So, wrapping this all up, what's the big takeaway from this deep dive?
Well, I think the consistent thread across almost all these diverse sources, ancient wisdom, mystical visions, even those intriguing scientific hints, is that the soul's entry isn't just a biological event.
That's more than that.
Much more. It's presented as a conscious, sacred choice, a profound decision made by a wise consciousness coming to participate in life.
A co-creation.
A true co-creation, uniting the intentions and energies of the father, the mother, and the arriving child's soul.
And by paying attention to maybe the signs, the traditions, the mystery around it all.
We can approach pregnancy, birth, parenthood with a much deeper sense of reverence, wouldn't you say? With more awareness, more gratitude for the profundity of it.
Yeah, definitely.
Because ultimately, each soul's journey is unique. Every single incarnation is portrayed as this incredible, sacred opportunity.
For growth, for love.
For growth, for love, and for consciousness itself to unfold and experience itself here on Earth.
Well, we hope this exploration has given you, our listeners, some really deep perspectives to mull over, some new ways to think about this fundamental mystery.
Yeah, food for thought, definitely.
Thank you so much for joining us on the deep dive today.